Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, February 1st meeting of the Fitchburg City Council. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves by stating their name and address.
Director Toja Robbins, Shorty Productions, LLC, 202 Highland.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Do I have to put up with 2 cameras? I mean, we got FATV recording this.
It's
Why do we have
That's
it?
the way it works. That's the way it works.
I don't mind being on TV, I love it, but, you know, I'm not that popular.
Well, just think of it as no different from the cameras you've already got.
Okay.
Councillor Cragen, would you please lead us in the salute to the flag?
Ken. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councillor Cragen.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Di Natale.
Here.
Councillor Fleming.
Here.
Councillor Green.
Here.
Councillor Schultz.
Here.
Councillor Squalia.
Present.
Councillor Van Hazinga.
Here.
President Zarella.
Here.
Councillor Boschman.
I'm right here.
And Councillor Kuchar.
Here.
Thank you very much. Public forum. The public had been advised to contact the city clerk's office regarding any remote comments of no more than 2 minutes. None were brought to our attention. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and then you may speak on it for no more than 2 minutes. Seeing none, we will begin with the report. There is no report of the Appointments Committee. Report of the Committee on Records. I'm sorry, I forgot who Councillor Cruz. I'm sorry, we just, for the public's knowledge, we just reshuffled committees for this new year. I'm still getting used to who's chair of what. Councillor Cruz, Committee on Records.
The records appear to be in order. Thank you, Councillor.
Make the motion we accept.
Second.
Motion and second to accept the report of the Committee on Records. If there is no objection, we'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is approved. Next, we have communications from His Honor the Mayor. An appointment letter from Mr. Colby J. O'Brien as a member of the Water Wastewater Commission, term to expire February 1st, 2026. That will be sent to appointments. And then we have a letter from His Honor the Mayor regarding Section 19 of the City Charter. I'm sorry, can I borrow that? Thank you. Which I am going to read, and then if the mayor would like to make any remarks.
I would, thank you.
Certainly. Dear honorable councilors, as mayor, I will be implementing Section 19 of our city charter. Under our charter, requests for information of department heads are to be submitted to the mayor's office. This change is occurring in order to avoid any potential inaccuracy in the transmittal of information regarding city services, decrease the burden on department heads, promote the formulation of good policy, and facilitate the separation of powers. While the charter provision requires the council to act as a body to request such information, I will be adjusting the process as follows. Councilors will submit requests to the mayor's office for information. Respectfully, I am asking for such requests to be made in writing via email to mayor@fitchburgma.gov or otherwise, and the mayor's office will work to accommodate councilors' telephonic inquiries. The mayor's office will distribute the requests to department heads on a weekly basis. However, time-sensitive matters will be addressed accordingly. Department heads will submit proposed responses to the mayor's office. The official position of the City of Fitchburg will be issued from the mayor's office in response to any requests through email, city's website, media posts, and press release. Please understand that department heads will be instructed to require councilors, press, and constituents to contact the mayor's office. This process strikes a balance between the strict procedural requirements of the Charter and facilitating requests for information and addressing the concerns set forth above. As this will be a new process, we look forward to receiving your comments and concerns and making adjustments if necessary. Sincerely, Stephen L. DiNatale, Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, if you would like to address the council,
Can I go from the rostrum?
you certainly may.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the City Council and viewing public. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you my effort to enhance the delivery of effective municipal government to the citizens of Fitchburg. Earlier this month, I began discussions with Council President Zarella regarding City Councilors' contact with department heads. I informed him of my intent to establish a new policy and procedure which would require City Councilors to forward their questions and concerns through my office. On the agenda tonight is my letter of communication to the City Council dated January 27, 2022, and the Council President read that for us. Since issuing this letter, there's been a tremendous overreaction. You may hear terms, for example, that I'm killing democracy or preventing City Council to operate as legislators. Need I say this is absolutely not true? Who has ever been denied information from my office? The implementation of this policy will promote the rule of law in our city. Our charter, as with all other similarly situated cities, requires separating power between the mayor's office, the city council, and the various quasi-judicial commissions and boards. City councilors will not be able to usurp the mayoral position of overseeing and directing the various departments of the city. City councilors should not act as the mayor, and department heads should not be distracted from their primary workday functions. Moving forward, I want to ensure councilors that just as you have been informed over this past 6 years, you will continue to be fully informed. I have always believed and still do that maintaining an informed council will provide for better legislation. However, the other concerns that I reference in my letter are of equal importance. I've come to learn over my tenure as your mayor that these debates are not good versus bad, but most often good versus good. As with all other issues debated in this council, I am sure the majority of us in our city government will work in good faith to resolve this, consistent with the best interest of the city of Fitchburg. In fact, this process has already begun with a constructive meeting between Councilors Zarella, Cruz, and Van Huizinga. Unfortunately, I don't believe that anything I say tonight will appease some of you. I'm simply asking that the City Council allow some time to pass as we work together to navigate this new procedure. Again, I reiterate, if you have constructive comments on this process, I will be happy to receive them. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't normally do this, but in this instance, I am going to exercise my prerogative to speak first to this matter. As the mayor said, he and his staff first approached me approximately a month ago regarding this potential policy. It was a potential policy at the time. And we had an extensive discussion via Zoom as to potential concerns and tweaks and refinements. And then, unfortunately, we were unable to continue that promptly because I fell sick. I apologize, but, you know, it certainly was not intentional. And then once this was put on the council's agenda, three of us did meet with Mayor DiNatale and his staff and did have a very frank and collegial discussion. There are many things we disagreed on. There are many things I still disagree on. I made it clear to the mayor that I am not in favor of this policy and that I see a lot of concerns with it. However, I do understand the reasons behind its implementation and agree that those reasons are valid. I believe that the policy is entered into in good faith, whether well-advised or otherwise, and I do hope to continue to work with the administration in the near-term future to address any issues that arise in the implementation of this policy regarding counselors who may feel that they do not have adequate access, or streamlining of the process to allow more efficient constituent services, clarifications of unclear issues. Because ultimately, while this would not be a policy that I would have adopted myself, it is within the mayor's prerogative to do so. And so it is our job as councilors, I feel, to continue to do our best work for our constituents within the constraints of this policy. And I see it as my job as president to help to facilitate the addressing of any concerns that my fellow councilors have with this policy, to the extent that I am unable to, of course, rescind it. That is not my prerogative. So I hope that we can have an equally frank and collegial discussion tonight regarding any concerns anyone may have and proposed changes that we may be able to address going forward. And I just ask everyone to remember that, yes, many of us are frustrated by this policy change, but it will not do us any good as a council or as a city to engage in acrimony and recriminations as opposed to finding a way forward in collaboration. That said, I will now open this up to the council for comment. Councillor Fleming.
As I have been saying, is this does not bother me at all. I have been following this protocol for about 6 months and find that the responses I get are much quicker and much more accurate. The protocol, to me, is not a big deal. There's never a time where I just show up at a department head's office to speak with them, because my problem with that is if 10 of us are showing up on one day to speak to this department head, when are they getting their work done? And then we're getting upset because things aren't getting done. So to me, this is not a problem because I've been doing this anyways, mostly the past 6 months, and I find that my questions are getting answered, and they're getting answered quickly. And that's all I really need to say.
Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was one of the councilors who met with the mayor and his administration this past week when this first came out, because I had my reservations about it and my concerns. But I've kind of written down my statement on this because I'm fairly new, so I want to get it right. I was sworn in on January 3rd. We all were. On January 7th, community development block grants were due. That was that Friday. And we wanted to get a grant together between the DPW, myself, and community development for rectangular after flashing beacons to address speeding on a street in my ward. And we were able to get that done in 72 hours for $71,000, that application. So my concern initially was that with this new procedure with Section 19, would be able to accomplish these things quickly when we need to. So we met with the mayor and his administration, and I want to give all the credit to the departments, by the way, in getting that grant done. They were really incredible. But when we met with the mayor, along with myself and fellow councilors, we went back and forth. It was very frank. It was an argument. But I think, after speaking with them and getting their promise that time-sensitive issues will be dealt with as such, I think the mayor's concerns are valid, that dealing with all 11 councilors on a daily basis can be burdensome to departments. And I'm willing to give the mayor and his office the benefit of the doubt that they can handle this burden and alleviate departments at this time. Especially after yesterday, And I want to single out and commend Joan David, the mayor's administrative aide. She lost her father yesterday morning and still came to work to make sure this got off on the right foot. And that needs to be acknowledged. That's choosing the needs of the people of Fitchburg over her own needs. That's incredible service to the city, and I want to acknowledge that. So thank you, Joan. In addition to that, today the mayor's office had approximately 35 requests put in by S11 councilors between Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. and Monday morning, and they were all answered today in an email format. They were sent to us, and I find that helpful, as well as we often have the same concerns. We deal with the same phone calls. So I'm willing to give it a shot and give some time with this, but I will be watching closely both the intentional and inadvertent outcomes of Section 19, and I won't hesitate to say we should bring it back on the table if need be. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Squalia?
As the legislative branch of city government, city councilors have a duty to serve as a check and balance to the power of the executive mayor position in the city. A deep concern is that if councilors, the press, and constituents do not have access to reliable, verifiable information from the departments that run our city, that duty as a check and balance is not being fulfilled. I believe in transparency and accessibility in government. I also believe in reducing red tape, not creating more layers of it. We've always been encouraged to take our questions directly to department heads in private. I am concerned as to why there is a sudden 180-degree change in policy, especially when this policy was last updated in 1948, speaking of Section 19 of our city charter. This was long before the age of internet technology and our fast access to information and the easy accessibility of city administration. I'm also concerned about the mayor's office's ability to handle this new role as the arbiter and gatekeeper of all information in the city. How can the mayor's office add on these new additional layers of administration that 11 city councilors have been assisting with and directed to do privately for years, especially when we are forwarding all questions and concerns through the mayor's office? I also have a concern of conflict of interest and ethical responsibility. I have a few questions. Will there be examples of types of questions or information that should be directed to the mayor's office versus SeeClickFix versus department heads, or is this an all or nothing decree? If we are looking for information on, if a constituent asks me, my trash hasn't been picked up, when will the trash be picked up? Is this something that I can get from the mayor's office quickly, or no? How do we as city councilors how are we allowed to speak to department heads in person as we need? Some councilors may not be so adept at writing emails full of information in order to get the questions answered they need. Some councilors may not be adept at phone calls. Some councilors need to speak to people in person. How will we be accommodating those councilors or those situations where a personal one-on-one conversation is needed? How does this impact city boards and committees? Board members who routinely email community development and the DPW for information regarding issues on the agenda, like the planning board or the zoning board. What assurances do we have that this decree of 12722 will not only be enforced for certain people, certain press, or certain councilors? How can we assure that we have equitable access to all information in the city? And regarding the budget hearings, one concern, when I was first elected in 2017, it was in the FY 2017 budget hearings. They were very long and lengthy. We had multiple department heads scheduled for multiple days where we could publicly ask them questions about the budget. And that was changed for FY 18 and FY 19 to not be allowed to ask those department heads questions in public. And we were specifically told to go take time out of our day, meet with as many department heads during the 2 weeks that we have the budget packet, and discuss those questions in private with the various department heads, all 11 city councilors. So this is a drastic change from that policy. So if we are no longer allowed to speak in person to department heads, especially during budget hearings when we are going over the hundreds of millions, $150 million budget of the city of Fitchburg, how will we be able to accurately and reliably get information and answers to the questions that we have? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I go to Councillor Boschman, I just want to make one suggestion, and I want to stress this is only a suggestion, not a requirement. But if my fellow councillors have any concern about the equitable application of this policy, which I do not, but if anyone does, please simply CC me on your communications, and I don't intend to do anything with them except have them in my inbox. And that way, if someone says, this councillor is not being replied to, or this councillor is getting much faster replies than this one, there's data then, instead of just allegations. And I will, of course, be sharing any data that I pull together with the mayor's office upon request. I am happy to serve that function to increase confidence in the council. That being said, Councillor Boschman.
Yeah. I'm not in favor of this new policy, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm the one council that goes down and see department heads quite a bit, but I want to make it very clear to everybody. Before I knock on the door, I ask them if they are busy, and if they're busy, do what they have to do, and let me know when they're not, and I'll come back, because I only live up the street. If I call them, I ask them the same questions. If you are busy, do what you have to do, and when you're done, give me a call, because I got a couple of questions I want to ask you. I always did that every time I knocked on the door. I was in City Hall quite a bit this past month, due to the simple fact that there was a screw-up on my taxes. So I was running back and forth to the tax collector to try to iron this out, because the bank that I do business with didn't pay the taxes, or it got lost in the mail way back when. So I was there quite a bit I was there. Then I found out about the policy because I called the chief of police, Ernie Martin, on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday, because they said I was reading the paper, and I noticed in the paper, in the back page, on the legal sections, that Ashby and Lunenburg are hiring policemen. And my question was this: is this going to affect our police officers in Fitchburg? I was told I cannot answer your question. All questions have to go to the mayor. I said, you got to be kidding me. And he said, no, all questions have to go to the mayor. So when I found out, I called the councilor to my right, but I couldn't get a hold of him. And then I called the councilor to my left, the council president, and he was busy. Then I called Andy, the vice president. And I was so upset, I'll tell you what I said, because I'm a working man, and I know what working men do. When GE took our rights away and some of the things that we couldn't come to an agreement, I want to shut down the government, like they do in Congress when they don't get their way. If you want something passed, we sit on it. We let it sit here, and we let it sit here. Someone's got to give. If it comes to a grant, and we lose the grant, it's not my fault. If I can't make the proper decisions for the taxpayers, I'm the type of guy that got to hear it face to face. I'm not going to sit here and write a letter to the chief, to the administration over here, and say this, and then all of a sudden I read the answer back and say, oh, what about this? I get my response, and then I start thinking about it. I've seen times when I had to call them back because I didn't remember something, and I said, oh, this is very important too. But I want to make it very clear. I have always put the city first. If they were busy, I did not bother them. I didn't say I'm the council, answer my question. One time did I bother the new commissioner of the DPW, and I'll tell you why. I took him in Fitchburg because I wanted to show him 15 minutes of his time. The city streets from January 17th, with the cars parked all over and people can't move ice.
Councillor,
I know, but I'm just saying
keep the specific examples.
I know, all right, but I'm just telling. So I'm not in favor of this, and if I have my way, but the council president is trying to keep me under control, I would slow down everything I possibly can. Everything possibly can. Because this is how it works, and this is what the working man does. We try to bargain in good faith, and if we don't get anywhere, nothing gets accomplished. They do it in Congress. I've seen it, you've seen it, and everybody's seen it. And if that's the way it's got to be, it's got to be that way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yes, I just have a specific question about the timeline on, if this goes well, great. If it doesn't and there's bumps in the road, when will you then address or readdress the policy change to make accommodations if things aren't working between the lines of communication? I mean, is it a month? Is it 45 days, 60 days, 6 months?
So, Councillor, the mayor is certainly welcome to answer for himself, but I will say that when I left my last meeting with him, we had agreed that we would discuss it further and address any concerns in 3 to 4 weeks.
It's a fluid process. Let's see how it's progressing. Your concerns certainly will be met with all seriousness.
I don't have any concerns
No,
with it
but-
because
but
I've never, I mean,
Right. And there
I'm a
may not
counselor
be
that
any-
reaches out to department heads, but I'm perfectly able and honestly capable of CCing everybody else who wants to be on the email chain. And I really don't care who I get an answer from, as long as I get an answer.
Right.
That's all, my duty first and foremost is to the residents and the constituents of this community. So it's another line of, somebody added onto the email chain. So I don't think that this is a big deal at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kuchar.
Thank you. I'm not to copy what Councillor Green has just said, but I understand it's in the charter. He's allowed to do it. And, CCing one more person on an email is not that big of a deal. My question, and I'm sure Councillor Schultz will probably have the same question, how does this affect once I was planning on addressing a ward meeting later on this month and going forward. How does this new policy affect ward meetings?
I don't think that it's going to make any difference if you're having a specific ward meeting and you want department heads there.
Yeah, if we wanted the DPW or the chief of police
That's a
at
direct
specific
line of
ward meeting.
communication to the constituent.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you. And additionally, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Van Hassen. I was just going to say, based on some of the concerns raised this evening compared to some of the discussion that we had on Friday, Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering if you could restate for the public and for the council that councilors who do not wish to communicate via email, I know it says it in your letter, but that councilors who do not feel comfortable communicating via email can call the office and will be accommodated.
Well, Joan has been saying,
She receives calls anyway. You still do.
yeah, if somebody has a phone call,
And it's unfortunate that we're thrown into the world of technology. I didn't learn how to use a computer till I was about 45.
If you want to, you don't.
It's unfortunate sometimes that we're all pushed into the world of technology, but we are. I didn't learn how to use a computer till I was 45. Sometimes you got to do it. So if you don't want to do that, we do say pick up a phone. But adding the mayor to this is transparency. Whether Mayor DiNatale is the mayor of the city of Fitchburg or not, the bottom line is this is about transparency. And the mayor's office in this city does not know how many times these councilors contact department heads. And he has the right to know that. He is the mayor, he is the CEO, he is the executive of this city. And he is doing his job. And this is about transparency, so he will know what is going on in the city. If it's a simple request of snow blowing and and potholes, you can put it into Quick Fix. You can send off an email, attach the mayor to it. But if it's a project, if it's a there's a teeth project going on, and department heads talking, all of a sudden, social media lights up. This is not right. This is a project going on in the city, and the mayor's office should be the one discussing this with his department heads. There are no other mayors in this room other than Mayor Stephen DiNatale, who I respect greatly, and I support this policy, and I think that we should all work together on it. This is good government.
Thank you, Joan. That said, Vice President Van Hazinga?
Thank you, Mr. President. So when this news came out, it was out of the blue, and I had a lot of concerns and a lot of questions. And our meeting last Friday did help, and I appreciate that time. But I do have just a couple more questions if the mayor or someone from his office wouldn't mind clarifying. In reading the letter, there's some questions about how this process works. In reading the letter, it seems like there's a chain of the councilor has an inquiry or a concern or a request. The process is to email the mayor directly. And the mayor then or the mayor's office will contact the department head, who will reply back to the mayor, who will reply back to the councilor. But then I'm also hearing from other councilors and tonight that it's just enough to copy the mayor on these correspondences. So I guess, could we have some clarification of which is it? What process do we have to follow?
You want to respond to that, Joan? It's copying, that's the point, is keeping me informed, my office. How you do that is very flexible, if you will.
And like it's a work in process, you know, it's going to evolve. I can already see just doing it this past week because of the way it's worded, exactly what you said. Send it to the mayor, you know. By CCing the mayor, by mayor at, I can say, hey, did you see this? Did you see this? You know, what's going on over here? This is transparency. So to think that we're trying to hide something, we are not. We are looking to see what is going on in the city of Fitchburg and putting out the accurate information that needs to be put out, which will be put out on the mayor's city page, the city page. You want to find anything? I want to encourage people. You want the accurate information, you go to fitchburgma.gov. Because if you hear it from anyone else, anyplace else, find out that's where it came from. But I would say that, and I said that today, that by sending it to the department head and CCing us, the department head is using common sense. They know that. The mayor has spoken to them about that. They will, you know, say, yeah, we'll put it on the list, we'll get a truck there. But if it's a question regarding policy, or again, a big project that we've gotten $500,000 on, and we're investing in here, and we're working on it, hello. Whose office should let this out? I don't see anybody else's office but his.
So very briefly, with all possible respect for the mayor and his staff, all but one of whom I've known for quite some time and who I like very much, just to keep us moving along smoothly here and get to the agenda, I am just going to ask that for the remainder of this discussion, any questions just be answered to the question specifically, and then we'll move on. If there needs to be a closing statement of any sort by the mayor or his staff, they will be afforded the opportunity to do so. I don't believe Councillor Van Hazinga was quite done, but Councillor Van Hazinga, you can continue.
That is reassuring, because if the mayor just wants to stay apprised of communications going back and forth, I don't have a problem with that.
But the department head knows that if it's a...
Okay. And
he is not going
because
to...
one of my main concerns with this policy in how it was first announced was even just the trivial items seemed to be impossible. That there's a lot of business that is not controversial, that is not earth-shattering, that doesn't need to take place in a game of telephone between the mayor's office and the department heads. So if it's just a matter of keeping tabs on communications going back and forth, I don't have a problem with that. Now, is this requirement just for communications to department heads, or is it any city employees?
As long as you CC the mayor.
So I'm asking, is it, because
What
the
city
letter
department-
references department heads.
What other than department heads? Who would you?
Well, if I'm contacting the superintendent of streets, is he a department head? Do I have to CC?
Okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So, I mean, do you have, has that been qualified about who this applies to?
I would say that you have to CC the mayor's office.
Okay,
How much time
if there's a
are you
traffic,
taking up?
if there's a
Because
traffic issue
Yeah.
and I talk to the traffic officer, I'm not talking to the police officer, I mean, the police chief, it's not something worth bothering him about. Do I have to CC the mayor on that?
So,
That's a constructive.
No,
and let us-
these are the
let us
kinds of
review
questions that are
That's
coming
right.
to mind as I work through how
We're
to
not going to
manage this.
decide on anything tonight,
Okay?
Counselor, but that, we will take that certainly into consideration.
No, and if you could huddle and think about how to work with that, that would be helpful to come back.
That's fine. I agree. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of back and forth that has gone on already, outside of just the people at this table, in the community, in emails I see going back and forth, and posts I see go back on Facebook. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I think a lot of that has to do with how fractured our society is. It's part of it's a symptom of a larger problem that we face. But I think it's also a problem in communication. And I don't think this policy was very well conveyed and announced. And I think that as a counselor on the receiving end of it, it was pretty troubling. Because me personally, and I know a lot of the other councils have been very supportive of the mayor. That, you know, I mentioned this in our meeting, in the last election, I held signs for hours, including one of the mayor's signs. And I've always hoped to think of him as a partner who's willing to work with the council and get things accomplished. So it's very surprising to have a restriction like this come out of the blue with no warning. I understand you were talking to Mr. Rowe, but I had no idea this was coming. And it wasn't very well conveyed, and what we're talking about now is different than what is actually required in the letter. And I think if the mayor wants to have a good partner in the council, it has to treat the council as a partner, not as an adversary. And I would encourage the mayor's office and the mayor to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. Because I think you get a lot farther and you get a lot more done working with people versus working against people and restricting people. So thank you very much.
thank you. And I will note that, I'm sorry. I will note that there is definitely an opportunity to enhance communication on policy. And I think really looking at this, I feel like with many things in politics and in city government, there was just one critical element that could have changed the entire tenor of the discussion. But you can't always think of it until after the fact, which was just a line saying, you know, this is a proposed version of the policy that was, you know, drafted in order to put it into place as quickly as possible, and it is anticipated that it will not be the final version. There is a line about addressing concerns. Again, not something that anyone could have necessarily anticipated ahead of time. It's just, the impression I'm getting from the council is that that's been the real sticking point here, is that for better or for worse, the letter came across as more inflexible than it was intended to. And I don't blame anyone for that. I just hope that tonight has helped to clarify that that was not the intention. And as I said, I look forward to working with the administration to refine this policy and to make it something that we can all live with and do our jobs with. Councillor Cragan.
Thank you, President Zarella. So I received this last week, and I've been mulling it over, and I showed it to my husband, and I parsed the words, because I'm a writer, and I'm very sensitive to language. And I've talked to some of our counselors, and also seen the response in the, the general localized social media. And my view on it is, pretty similar to what the mayor's administrative assistant said, which is, the buck stops here. The Fitchburg has a social media presence. It is on Facebook. It is, pretty full of information. It is full of definitive information. And my first thought, again, reading the article, was, oh my God, I've got to get myself trained. This is my first month as a city councilor. I know every department head, but I really need to talk to them about how the departments work. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What other departments are they working with currently? What other projects are coming up? To be better informed, to inform our residents. And in the last 3 weeks, I reached out directly to, not alphabetical order, Animal Control, Fitchburg Police, Fitchburg Fire Department, Board of Health, Department of Public Works, Treasurer, Superintendent of Schools, with whom I have had ongoing conversations for 13 years, Library Director, Veterans Council, Clerk's Office, Amanda, see a lot of Amanda, the Auditor's Office. I am planning to reach out to Tom Skorofsky, Mary Jo Bohart, because the downtown business questions people had. And I've CC'd the mayor's office, and I've CC'd Joan directly for everything that's gone out in the last, week. Heard back from the chief. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the dog license poster awareness contest. It's a small thing. It's a happy thing, but it'll get a lot of kids doing posters. That's good. And I realized I hadn't always CC'd the mayor on every community project I was doing. And I'm going to take the high road on this and say, try it out, and if it clarifies information so that there isn't the looseness on the local social media, which I'm told about and occasionally see, I think that's all to the good. Having a firm, single message about actual facts is a good way to live. So that's what I've been thinking about, President, and thank you for letting me speak.
No problem at all. Councilor Giannis-Hawley.
I don't know how else this could have been communicated to the council other than the way it was done, because that is what a formal communication from the administration happens. They submit a communication to our packet, we get it, we digest it, and then we have a meeting. That's what we're doing right now. Nowhere in the communications did the mayor's office say, this is non-negotiable, this is not up for discussion, we're not going to meet and talk about it. It is a formal communication. I don't know how else he's supposed to submit information to us. Through carrier pigeon? I'm not sure. But it was in our packets. We're having a meeting on it. So I disagree that this was not done in good taste or the wrong way. What the unfortunate occurrence is that when a letter gets submitted 6 days ago, there is already all of these presuppositions, assumptions, rumors, instigations, before we have a meeting, or before councilors meet with the person responsible for this personally and directly. So there's nothing wrong with how this was submitted. This is how they submit communications. Everyone had a lot of people had an overreaction and made assumptions before asking these questions. Not everybody, but some. And that's what this is all about. And we've already heard it several times here tonight, their willingness to work with us, even though they technically don't have to, because the department heads do not answer to the city council. They answer to the chief executive. Chief executive devises their budgets. Chief executive determines what gets appropriated out of free cash. I was at a Public Works Committee meeting last week. I cannot tell you how many times I heard Commissioner Erickson make these comments. Well, the DPW would like to do that, ma'am, but we don't have the money in our budget, so I'm going to have to talk to Mayor DiNatale. Well, Mr. So-and-so, I can't do this, but we maybe could look through an avenue of free cash, but the mayor controls the free cash, so I'm going to have to ask him if he'd be willing to do that. Every other minute, the mayor's name was invoked, because the mayor is responsible, not Commissioner Erickson, for what gets done. So, as Councilor Fleming said, Councilor Green, when I read this, I didn't even lose sleep over it. I didn't think anything of it, because for 14 years, when Mayor Wong was mayor, Mayor DiNatale, I've always included the mayor on everything. Because ultimately, if I don't get a response in a timely fashion from a department head because they're busy, I'll go to him and say, can you get somebody in gear to help me out? And it gets done quickly because they answer to him. They don't answer to me. And I think that gets lost on a lot of people here. There was a comment made about the budget process. And this is in line with what this policy is seeking to achieve, in my opinion. When we talk about the budget every year, what do we say? It's the mayor's budget. Who signs the document? The mayor does. When I was a city councilor, when Mayor Wong was the mayor, we had, I can't even count how many instances where either the former mayor was not at a budget meeting, or, well, the mayor wasn't at a budget meeting, let's say. Many of them that she didn't go to. She wasn't required to go to it, even though it was her budget. The department heads were at these meetings. We had 8, 9, 10 meetings, 4 hours a clip, every single page we go over. And every 5 minutes, a counselor would ask the department head a direct question. The department would sit there and go, I can't answer that for you, counselor. I didn't put this budget together. You'll have to ask Mayor Wong. You'll have to ask Mayor Wong. Oh, really? Oh, well, you'll have to ask Mayor Wong. Same thing with Mayor DiNatale. Why is that? Because they don't put the budget together. He does. It's his name on the document. He's got to take responsibility, just like his predecessors have done. So we changed the budget process. Again, folks, context is everything in this world, because if you don't have context, you have angry people. The budget was changed process because a lot of us were sick and tired of asking department heads questions they couldn't answer. So we said, why am I going through them? Go to the top. Go to the guy responsible for everything, or woman, or whatever. Go to the source. And let's stop this nonsense and wasting our time. And there was also a lot of discussions in those meetings that had nothing to do with the budget. 5-year plan, what are your goals for this? Should you be using your people this way instead of this way? Had nothing to do with anything with the budget. It was a free-for-all for TV time. So we condensed it, we streamlined it, and what's the process now? The process now has been, we have one meeting where the mayor, Auditor Brooks, Treasurer Cervantes, and his staff are front and center at the table. They go through every page. They answer questions. And then we go away for 2 weeks and we put together reductions in spending we want to see happen. We submit it to the city clerk, but during that period, we were free to ask department heads direct questions about what this line item represents or what would. Okay, so the difference now is you email the mayor and copy the department heads, or vice versa, which is what I've been doing anyway, because it's not Director Curry's budget. It's not Chief Martineau's budget. It's his budget. So if I'm going to propose a cut, I want him to defend it. And I said to him when I read this, I gave him a call. I said, because I know this may shock some people, I didn't know anything about this either. I called him and I said, what are you doing here? You want to take all this burden? Good luck to you, and to you too. No skin off my back, because I'm going to tell everybody who contacts me, why didn't you get back to me yet? Ask him. It's his fault. I'll throw him under the bus every chance I get in this regard. Because that's where the buck stops. So, I mean, this didn't even cross my mind. And I know there are some people who don't like hearing this either, that Leominster next door, that I dub Utopia sometimes because, you know, they don't do anything wrong, and Gardner, they've been doing this for years. Man Mazzarella, you think this is bad. All right? Talk to some of the people who used to work at Leominster City Hall, and they'll tell you that you ain't seen nothing. Now, I'm not saying that because this is the reason why we're doing it. I'm trying to assuage the public out there who are purposefully misled about these things, that this is not without precedent. This is not unheard of. Many communities do this, and do it to great success. Now, Given that fact, I understand some may say, well, I don't represent Leominster. I don't represent Gardner. I represent Fitchburg. Those same people may also be the first ones to say that we should be emulating Leominster at every opportunity. So when we finally do emulate them, we get criticized. So, can't have it both ways. So I wanted that context about the budget process put into perspective in relation to what's going on here. The mayor is involved anyway. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid their office. Now, since this policy has been put into place, I have had 13 constituent issues since Thursday night to right now, and every single one of them has been addressed, either through his office or through his subordinate, one of the department heads. Business as usual, no issue. Okay, so I want the public to understand very clearly that after 14 years of doing this job, I have experienced what happens when there are mayors who are not attentive and not present, and what kind of chaos that allows for. So if he wants to take all the arrows, good luck to him. And I'll be the first to tell someone, talk to him. It's his problem now. And the last thing I'll say is, I happen to know from my discussions with department heads over 14 years, they're not going to say this publicly, they're not going to admit it, but I guarantee you, they're elated about this. Because I can't imagine them doing their jobs when I, Marcus DiNatale, am peppering them every day with stuff that isn't time sensitive, and they've got a job to do. This relieves the burden off of them, okay, which typically involves the mayor anyway. They can't do anything outside of their budgetary limits without his approval. So go to a public works meeting, go to a finance committee meeting. Every other week we talk about how, why isn't the mayor doing this? No one's saying, why isn't Steve Curry doing this, or why isn't Chief Martineau doing this? Why isn't Steve DiNatale doing this? Good question. It's his responsibility. So I see that we can have this be, play out more, but I want councilors to understand, we are the legislative branch, we're not the executive branch. We can make suggestions to the mayor, and it's his risk he takes in not trying to work with us, but ultimately, he doesn't have to change anything. Whether this is charter related or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it's in the charter. If he wants to control the flow of information from his direct reports, that's his right, because they don't answer to us. This is basic stuff to me that I know some will construe as I'm defending someone who's related to me. That's been tried for 16 years now to great failure. But, I just wanted to throw that out there. So my frustration, Mr. President, in general, is not with anyone who has a disagreement, is not with anyone who has concerns. It's how they get those disagreements and concerns addressed. I'd like to thank Councilor Cruz, President Zarella, and Vice President Van Hagenzinga for doing the responsible thing in meeting with the mayor immediately upon reading this to get clarity and get questions and get their opinions voiced before riling up the masses. That's professionalism, and I commend the three of you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Schultz next. I would just like to make a couple clarifying comments. Just that I think the issue that some of us are concerned may become a problem with the budget process is not to do with defending the allocation of resources, which I think we can all agree is entirely the mayor's policy, and there's no reason to ask department heads to defend it. I think it does come down to both gaining understanding of how a given line item works within a department, which, the mayor may have some of those answers, but honestly, I think it would be unreasonable to expect him to have all of them. He's a smart guy, but he's not Renaissance polymath who's going to know every nuance of every department he's responsible for. No mayor is. And then the other questions that may be better directed to department heads would be questions about why they requested certain budget allocations, which is sort of their purview. They make the requests and the mayor decides which ones to fill. That being said, I do have hope that we will, prior to the budget process coming before us, work out a way to work within this policy, get those questions answered. I also just want to note, in my conversations with my fellow councilors about this, I don't think that anyone is at all contesting the mayor's authority to implement this policy. I entirely agree. As much as I may not agree with the specifics, it is 100% within the executive authority of the mayor's office to make this policy and enforce it. That said, Councilor Schultz.
Thank you, Councilor Zarilla. Like Councilor Cragen and Councilor Cruz, I'm willing to see the policy and to see it be implemented and give it a chance. I heard some encouraging words about flexibility, and Joan said that we could still use see-click fix and put potholes in and a lot of other things that we normally do. So I'm willing to give it a chance, and like Councilor Di Natale just said, it is certainly within his purview to make this policy according to the city charter and so on. And the mayor himself seems to be willing to work with us to make it work. So I'm willing to give it a chance, and that's where I stand right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, I have Councilors Squalia and Boschman for the second time. I would just like to, I meant to mention this earlier, if councilors do have specific suggestions or requests for tweaks to this policy, I would encourage you to copy me on them, simply because that way we can consolidate that process and not have 11 different chains of negotiation happening, because ultimately this policy is only going to get better if it remains cohesive, if the different tweaks and so forth are integrated as parts of a whole and not haphazard piecemeal. But again, that's just a request. Councilors can do as they see fit. I have no authority to require that. That said, Councilor Squalia.
Are you, President Zarella, requesting that if we have clarifying questions, we send them to you, and then you can compile them into one document of which we can get those clarifying questions answered to further clarify this policy? Because, hearing some of the clarifying language, it kind of just makes me have more questions. So, having those clarifying answers written out by the mayor's office would be very helpful.
Certainly, my suggestion is simply that when you communicate with the mayor's office to ask any of those questions or to suggest a change in the policy, just copy me on it so that way, periodically, I can sort of compile what's been said and then talk to the mayor or the solicitor or any of the mayor's other staff to see if we can craft something comprehensive that addresses those concerns. But certainly I would not suggest that you can't get clarifying questions answered individually. I would think that the mayor's office would be perfectly willing to do that on a case-by-case basis, especially if it is simply clarifications of the existing policy. But yes, my ultimate thought behind that would be to enable sort of a comprehensive, reviewable compendium, if you will, of these clarifications so that anyone who may forget what clarification was made or have a further concern about something that was already clarified could go to that and
like
say...
a frequently asked questions document.
Basically, yes. This would be entirely in the spirit of attempting to smooth out the process between the council and the mayor's office. And again, it's not at all, I don't suggest at all that it should be the mandatory way that anyone does things. I'm simply offering to be the facilitator for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Brochman?
I just want to say, make it clear to the councilors, I did take the proper procedures. I didn't go to the mayor and ask the questions because I didn't think he would recognize me just as a city council. I went to the top of the command. I went to the vice president, and I went to the president. And I voiced my concerns to them. And I told them exactly how I felt. I didn't bother the mayor because I'm not really that good with words, and I probably would have said things that I should never be saying. And he probably would have got upset with the mayor, like he gets upset with me sometimes. But I did go through the proper channels. I want to make that very, very clear. I did contact him. What bothers me the most out of this whole deal, if we knew about it a month ago, this council should have known about it a month ago. So we could have had the questions that we wanted to have asked. That's my problem. Not be sprung on to me by the chief of police on a Tuesday afternoon saying we can't talk to you anymore, and I call him, and I didn't even know he was having conversations with the mayor at the time.
So, Councillor, I will definitely take the heat for that. As I said, after the initial consultation that we had on that, that was when I got sick. And so I was unable to do the follow-up I intended to. It certainly was not and will never be my intention to keep anything from the council. I just felt that it would have had more utility to communicate with the council after we had had a few further discussions to clarify what the policy might look like. But then that didn't happen because I was out of commission. So again, if you know, that was not at the direction of the mayor's office. I was not told to keep it from anyone. I simply intended to get a few further steps down the road and then talk to the council about it. And life happened. I mean, I apologize, but I was knocked flat for a while, and so I was unable to continue to fulfill the role that I was intending to play in that process. And by the time I was back on my feet, it was, apparently time for the policy to be implemented. Caught me a bit off guard too, but it's if you've got to blame someone for that part of it, for the lack of prior communication with the council. Like people have been saying, the buck stops here. I'm the president of the council. If you got to blame someone for that, you can blame me. But certainly, I want it to be very clear that it was not my intention to, negotiate anything behind the council's back or to keep the council in the dark until the mayor gave me permission to tell people or anything like that. Nor was I asked to. It was just bad timing and coincidence.
I understand that, and I understand you were sick, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that I did take the proper protocol, because I figure I go through you.
Oh, certainly, yes,
And
you did.
president.
I can confirm that. Councillor Boschman called me up, told me how he was feeling. I explained what I could explain, and then addressed some of his concerns with the mayor when I spoke with him. And those concerns were well received. So I think that is a perfectly acceptable process to go through, in my view. And I am always happy to facilitate that for any councillors who want me to be their liaison with the mayor's office, if for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable going directly, whether it be because of a communication issue or whatever else. I see that as part of my job that you have all put your faith in me for. And so feel free. I mean, get in touch with me anytime.
Well, I just want to make it very, very clear to you and to the other councilors, I don't feel like I should be stepping over your head or the vice president's head. You are elected by me and my fellow councilors to represent us, you and the vice president. And that's why and I believe my fellow councilors called you and to do the negotiations. I don't believe that I should go and talk to the mayor on negotiations, not on this particular matter. To me, it's too much of an issue, it's too personal, and I take it very offensively the way this policy is. Call it transparency or not, I don't care what you want to call it.
Sure.
But I look at it this way. When I used to go to the Calvin Brooks and talk to him, he used to calm me down. But now it's game on, because when they come in front of the council, it's going to be what it is. You think Donald Trump was bad? Wait till Boschman starts. Really. Because it's going to happen.
Let's try to avoid turning Fitchburg into Washington in either party. But yes, I certainly appreciate both the faith that you put in me and your constant respect for the position that I am in. And again, I'm always willing to fill that role. I do just want to let the council know, however, that I would not be offended if I found out that councilors were talking to the mayor about something like this without going through me. I see myself as a facilitator for the smooth running of the council, not as an authority over my fellow councilors, except to the extent that I'm presiding over meetings. So I'm always happy to help, but never feel like I will be offended if you take something directly to the mayor. That's your prerogative. You're just as much councilors as I am. So that said, I'm sorry, who was up? Did someone else have their hand up? Councilor Craven.
I'm still familiarizing myself with the rules of the council as they combine with the parliamentary rules, and I'd like to suggest that, I'd like to actually make a motion that we move on to Section 4, communication, since there is no motion to be made on this Article 19.
Certainly, if we are...
Thank you.
I have a motion and second to move on to the next item of the order. If there is no objection and all have been heard, then we will move on. All right. We are all set, and I want to thank the mayor's team for their input.
No, it's not a motion.
And we'll be in touch. Next on the agenda, communication from the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board. If there is no objection, we will waive the reading and place that on file with the city clerk.
On the agenda.
Seeing no objection, it will be filed. Next, 01022, annual report of the Montechusett Regional Vocation Technical High School for the year 2021. Again, if there is no objection, we will waive the reading and place it on file. Seeing no objection, it is waived. Report of the Finance Committee. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Finance met last Tuesday and took up the following orders. 21821 was an order adopted to appropriate $9,000 from available funds to facilities repair and care, tax possession maintenance for 3 properties that we had to do work on in order to get back on the tax rolls. 2019-21 and 003-22 went hand in hand. One was an ordinance, one was a grant acceptance for $480,000 from Mass DPH to support staffing for COVID-19 contact tracing and related services in the 13 communities of the MPHN network. And the ordinance was to set the rates of hourly pay for employees that we would be contracting with to do this work as the state has pushed this responsibility onto localities. So the ordinance was adopted as amended, and 00322 is accepted. 00422 was a grant acceptance for $32,500 from the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for updating the city's open space and recreation plan. 00522 was a grant acceptance of $65,000 adopted by the committee to assess and plan for remediation at 173 Bemis Road. That's the property, the vacant property that's graffitied and overgrown on the corner of Intervale Road and Bemis. It's been long vacant for well over a decade, so Tom Skorsky testified that this is a good first step in order to get that property cleaned up and get it back on the tax rolls. And then lastly, 00622 was an order to accept a grant of $45,000 to prepare the city for the sale of 44 Winoosknock Road, the former Flack building, under the school department's ownership. They recall deemed it surplus property and sent it to the city. City council has already accepted that property back under city ownership, and this money is going towards preparing that location for sale for commercial use.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Wait, so, I'm sorry, hold on just a moment. First of all, can I ask Councilor Schultz that this be a motion to accept excluding 21921, because we will need to vote on that separately?
00622.
And
00622.
if the councilor is amenable to excluding 00622?
I'm amenable.
Okay, so this is a motion to accept and act upon the recommendations of the committee report on 21821, 00322, 00422, and 00522. Speaking on the motion, if there is no objection, we'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, it is adopted. We now have 21921.
Make a motion to send to first and second reading as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send to first and second reading as amended. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Cragan.
So moved.
Counselor Cruz.
Yes.
Counselor Di Natale.
No.
Counselor Fleming.
No.
Counselor Green.
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Squalia.
Aye.
Counselor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
President Zarella.
Yes.
Counselor Boishman.
Yes.
Counselor Kucher.
No.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. And now we have 00622. Councilor Squalia?
Thank you. I am in support of this proposal. I think that the 44 Winoosknock building would be very expensive for the city to rehabilitate for its own purposes, and I believe that property is undervalued as a current, the Caldwell School as it was. It is currently vacant of that. However, I would like the city to urge the city to ensure that we have a plan and a location for the school building maintenance department, which currently exists in that building. They have a little wood shop. They have a space for trainings and meeting of their employees to go over the daily tasks. They have an office all together, and they have storage available as well. So I would like to just ensure that when we are preparing for the sale of 44 Winoosknock, that we are also preparing for a good location for school building and maintenance, because we have many schools in need of much maintenance and very few maintenance workers to do that work. So we need to make sure that we can efficiently manage those employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cragan?
I'll just speak on that as well. The school building maintenance was formerly at Laurel Street, and there, again, there aren't as many people there as we need and have had in the past, but nevertheless, I know that they have moved before, they will move again. I'm the new chair of city property. I look forward to getting a full immersion into all the whys and wherefores, but I'm glad to see this before us, because it is an amazing space in terms of where it is.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Councilor Squalia.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept.
I have a motion and second.
On the motion? I'm
On the
not-
motion?
Yeah, on the motion, I'm not going to vote for it. I'm against it. I'm against the sale of the property altogether.
Okay. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
In opposition? One in opposition. Motion carries. All right, report of the Public Works Committee. Councilor Fleming.
Yes, thank you. The Public Works Committee met on January 25th and took up several orders. 19621, Councilor Mark Natale on behalf of resident Barbara Slattery to install a sidewalk apron at the corner of Old Deerfield Road and Electric Ave, similar to the one recently installed on the same side on Mount Elam Road at Electric Ave. Then allowing for an installation of a crosswalk to enhance the safety of pedestrian traffic for the residents of Old Deerfield Road who use the adjacent bike path. This was approved pending the results of a traffic study. Traffic study will be conducted in-house by DPW with support of the Fitchburg Police Department. Anticipated timeline for completion of the traffic study is April 2022. If the traffic study concludes a crosswalk is acceptable at this location, one will be installed pending availability of funds. 19721, Councilors Sam Squalia and Elizabeth Walsh to petition the city to replace the broken guardrail boards along Harvard Street between Bowtell and St. Bernard Street as shown in the attached pictures, which I don't know if anybody saw those. Anyways, that was approved for the spring. 19821, Councilors Mark Natale and Bernie Schultz on behalf of resident Carrie Harris to install a new fence on the right side of Forest Street, just right after Maple Street and 74th Street, if going down the hill from Pine Street. This was also approved for the spring. 19921, Councilor Marisa Fleming on behalf of Fisher Road residents Yarazbeth Guzman, Lloyd Wenzel, and Christine Fagoni to request a new sign and public lighting for Fisher Road is outlined in the enclosed petition. The signage and the Jersey barriers were approved. The lighting and bridge repairs approved pending funding. 21721, Councilors Mark Natale and Paul Boschman on behalf of Georgie Rodriguez to install a street light on Wall Street between the corner of Wall and Beach Street and 20 Wall Street pole. Pole number for placement would be 631. Excuse me. This was approved, pending funding. 22021, Councilor Marisa Fleming to install barriers or guardrails at the culverts along Billings Road to mitigate any vehicle sliding into them. Markers have been placed, but once it snows, these markers were no longer visible. This was withdrawn because the work had been done. 08920, Councilor Bernie Schultz and resident Alec Freeman of 20 Rainfield Ave to remove the no turn on red sign at the intersection of John Citrino Memorial Drive and Water Street. And this has been held. Thank you.
Councilor, could you tell us what happened with 215 and 21621?
Oh, did I miss those? Oh, sorry. Yes, 215, Councilor Marisa Fleming and Andrew Van Hazinga to install a streetlight on the pole number 5 in front of the Abolitionist Park located on Snow Street. That was approved pending funding. And what was the other one?
216.
216.
16. Oh, yeah, this was the big one. I'm sorry. Sergeant Dan Boudreau and Councilor Squalia and Nick Erickson, DPW Commissioner, to petition for installation of a traffic light island between Old Leominster Road and Abbott Ave. Addition of a no right turn on Abbott Ave turning onto Leominster Road. Addition of a stop sign at the end of Old Leominster Road at Abbott Ave. This was approved pending a traffic engineering study to determine the correct placement of signage. Thank you.
Make a motion to accept the committee's report.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the report. Speaking on the motion, Councilor Schultz.
Yeah, on the motion, on our agenda, it says these items were sent to public safety. Is that correct, or were they approved at the?
Well, these were approved through Public Work. They still have to be sent to these other.
So they're still going to public safety, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to clarify, then, this motion will be to act on the recommendations subject to the approval of other committees that need to address them. Councilor Squalia?
That was just going to be my question to clarify exactly what we're voting on.
Councilor Green?
On 21621 specifically, was there a date in mind for the traffic and engineering study for that?
We did not get that. I can get that for you if you'd like.
Okay.
Councilor Squalia?
It was noted by Commissioner Erickson that it was only for a stop sign, and that was fairly simple for him to accomplish.
All right, thank you very much. Now, if there is no objection, Councilor Green?
I'm sorry, just hearing that information from Counselor Squalia, then, does this, only because it's going to be referred to public safety, is it only been approved for a stop sign and not a stop light or the installation of a traffic island? Does it need to be amended, is my question, because I'm hearing stop sign, but the petition is for a traffic island.
It's also for a stop sign. The stop sign was the only thing that the Sergeant Boudreau requested a traffic study for. The stop sign portion of
The sign, yes.
petition.
Chief, if you have anything to add, you're certainly welcome to.
Councilor Squalia is correct. As far as public safety and the traffic commission, we're concerned about the stop sign installation, and that's all will be before public safety. The island is an infrastructure change. It has nothing to do with that. Where we have control of the stop signs, that's what will go in front of Councilor Green.
Which is exactly what I said. It's pending, depending on the signage.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. If there are no further questions or comments, then if there is no objection, we'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, the report of the Public Works Committee is approved. Orders finance. First, we have 01122
through 1422 will be sent to finance.
Second?
I'm actually going, at the request, I do have a motion and a second, but at the request of Solicitor Pusateri, I'm going to ask that we actually exclude 1122 from that, and instead send it to, entertain a motion for suspension to send it to executive session of the next city council.
So moved.
Withdraw my motion.
Or amend your
I
motion.
will amend my motion.
Excellent, thank you. So I now have a motion to, well, I guess we don't actually need a motion on the other three. They stand referred to finance. And I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend the
Motion for
rules
suspension on 1122.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Cragan.
Aye.
Counselor Cruz.
Yes.
Counselor Dinatale.
Yes.
Counselor Fleming.
Yes.
Counselor Green.
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Squalia.
Aye.
Counselor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
President Zarella.
Yes.
Counselor Boishman.
Yeah. Yes.
Counselor Kuchar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Move to send it to council as a whole.
Executive session
Move to send it
of the
to-
next council meeting.
Move to send it to executive session for February 15th.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and second to send this to executive session for the meeting of February 15th. On the motion, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we have 4 additional petitions, which will be sent to their respective committees. 01522, Liz Murphy, Chair of the NICE Task Force, Director of Housing and Development, to improve the enclosed petition to accept MGL Chapter 40U. Oh, yes?
Oh, no, Mr. President, I was just going to ask if we could waive the readings of these.
Oh, well, if there is no objection, we can, although I do see we have Mr. Skrowski in the audience, and I would invite him to address the council if he wishes.
I'll be brief. I just noticed the 40U was only going to Finance Committee, whereas the other was going to Finance and Legislative Affairs. I would recommend that they're both taken on in Legislative Affairs because they're really seen as a pair to be discussed as such.
President Zarella, I would move that we send 01622, and if 01522 is tied with it, also to economic development, as establishing a residential and commercial vacant property registry ordinance with minimum requirements will have a strong impact on the economic development, especially when we're talking about our Main Street corridor.
And what does the Chair of Economic Development think of that?
I'm not unwilling to hear it, but I do think there are complications to sending certain petitions to multiple committees, which gets compounded if the more and more committees it goes to. We went through this with the zoning ordinance, where it was very difficult and a labor-intensive process to make the recommendations of the committees match up, to make sure we had a final product at the end that was usable. So while we will be able to hear this as, once we get the reports of the committees, maybe it would be best to minimize the number of committees it goes to, but I do refer to the determination of the chair.
Move to council as a whole for both.
Second.
This would be a motion on suspension of the rules.
Motion for suspension.
Second.
Yes. Speaking on the motion, I don't necessarily think that's necessary. I think that I was actually going to inquire whether there was an element of it that made it necessary to send it to finance in the first place. But I believe there would be a fine element which would send it to finance under our rules. But I think that council as a whole would be a needlessly lengthy process compared to putting it through the smaller committees. But if it is the will of the council, then that will be fine. Councilor Schultz.
Yeah, I just was going to say that I agree with Councilor Van Hazinger that we went through that with zoning, with legislative affairs and economic development. I was on both committees, and it's a needless process to send it to both committees. It should just go to the finance and legislative affairs like Tom is suggesting, I believe. And I agree with you, Council as a whole. It seems like it's an extra step that we don't need. Thank you.
Councilor Giannatali?
Well, I don't see council as a whole as being an extra step. It's to fully address Councilor Schultz and Councilor Van Hazinger, what they've correctly said, what happened last time, and that is, if you have competing committees, especially in that last case where you've got certain councilors on legislative affairs who are not on economic development, there could be potentially 6 or 7 different councilors talking about this. So why not just have it go to one committee where all 11 of us can address it at that one time, instead of having legislative affairs issue a report, economic development issue a report, and then we have to basically merge the two together through another painstaking full council meeting. So let's just have a council as a whole, and then where all that gets wiped out. I think in the case of like public safety and public works, that's a little different because you got DPW and you got the police who are usually working those as point. When it comes to ordinance changes of a magnitude of an economic development process or zoning, I say just kill 2 birds with 1 stone and just have it all together. So that's why I made that motion. I don't think that's an extra step. I think that'll just clear the deck right there. So.
All right, I see you. I would say my take on it is simply that because it involves an ordinance and because legislative drafting is, as we saw with zoning, a very, very detail-oriented, persnickety kind of process, the more cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, the longer it will take.
So I mean, so we agreed, or I think a lot of us would agree that it doesn't belong in finance. But I also agree that if it were to go to I guess it's up to the council. There's a motion and a second on the floor. We can either send it to council as a whole, or if it doesn't pass, then we got to send it to legislative affairs only, or send it to both legislative affairs and economic development. I mean, I'd be more amenable to council as a whole or legislative affairs. I just want one bite at the apple here in committees, that's all. So
I would agree.
I will see what the council says for the motion for council as a whole.
Right. I would agree that if the motion for council as a whole fails, my motion, or the motion that I would wish to entertain would be a motion to suspend the rules and send it solely to legislative affairs. I'm sorry, I had Councilor Squalia next.
Yes, I completely agree with Councilor Di Natale. There are 7 of us councilors on the 2 suggested committees. I would like to see it just open up to all 11 councilors in one meeting. We can all ask questions. We don't have to have a discussion. multiple counselors are in finance, and then it goes to legislative affairs, and then it gets discussed there, and then it goes to the full council, and we don't have the opportunity to ask questions as a full council, or at least the 4 of us that are in those 2 committees. So bringing it to the council as a whole, we can just have a full discussion without any overlapping. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Van Hazinga?
Just simply to agree with Councilor D'Antelli's suggestion that even if there are more cooks in the kitchen, it's simpler to do it once than to do it repetitively and then try to reconcile the different versions.
Right, which is why my personal preference would be legislative only, but that's fine, you know. That said, I have a motion and a second, and since this is a motion for suspension, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Cragan?
Yes.
Counselor Cruz?
Yes.
Counselor D'Antelli?
Yes.
Counselor Fleming?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Squalia?
Aye.
Counselor Van Hazinga?
Yes.
President Zarella?
Yes.
Counselor Boishman?
Yes.
And Counselor Kuchar?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. So this will be scheduled for council as a whole. I will be in contact with the administration to schedule that meeting. Then we have 01722, Councilor Bernie Schultz and Mary Barroso of 155 Milk Street, owner of adjacent property, to repair a retaining wall at the rear of 155 Milk Street extending onto Maple Street. That will go to Public Works. And Sergeant Daniel Boudreau, Fitchburg Police Traffic Unit, to petition for installation of no parking at all times on both sides of Game On Way from Industrial Road, Victoria Lane intersection to the Game On soccer facility entrance, and that will go to Public Safety and Public Works.
I have a question on
Councilor
01822. Is this something that needs to be sent to Public Works? It feels like just a sign installation from the Fitchburg Police Department. Wouldn't necessarily have to be discussed in Public Works. I don't know.
I have no strong opinion on that subject. If either the chief or the chair of Public Works would like to chime in.
I'm thinking just the public safety, but if it's, you know, maybe, let me speak with Sergeant Boudreau and see what he thinks. Unless you...
I would defer to Sergeant Woodrow. He's been working closely with the Game On folks on the security plan, getting in and out of the facility, so I would leave that up to the sergeant. He's been working very closely with Game On.
Okay, I'm fine with sending it to Public Works.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it at that, and if it turns out that it doesn't need to be in front of Public Works is free to discharge it back to the full council, or, which would essentially render the referral void. All right, that concludes our agenda. I have one announcement. Ward 1 City Councilor Bernie Schultz is hosting a Ward 1 meeting on Wednesday, February 16th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Fitchburg Legislative Building, 700 Main Street. Fire Chief Dante Suarez and Director of Facilities Russell Karlstad will make presentations and then answer questions. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to make an important announcement that I would, if he's still awake, wish my son, William Van Hazinga, a happy birthday. He turns 11 today, and he's a great kid. I'm very excited for him.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, and also happy birthday. If there is no objection, we are adjourned.